All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good buddy Cliff Schecter. Cliff is, of course, the best-selling author of The Real McCain. He's a pundit, a political strategist for his firm Libertas LLC, which you can find at libertasllc.com. He's also a regular columnist for Al Jazeera English. You can find him on Twitter at Cliff Schecter. Cliff, buddy, thanks for being on the show again.
My pleasure, buddy. Thanks for having me here.
All right, so Cliff, I've known you a good while. We've been friends for a while, and your main issue
on that, by the way.
And I'm still dealing with it. I'm still having
dealing
the therapist haven't been able to help. I'm on all types of drugs to try to get over it. And Cliff, I just can't shake you, brother.
Maybe electric shock therapy. You may want to try that. Well,
that might be next. There's always suicide. But anyway.
Oh man, we're going there in this conversation. Okay, go for it, buddy.
Anyway, though, your main issue, though, since I've known you, has always been the guns and the horror that is the NRA. So let's get right into it. What are your thoughts on the latest developments when it comes to gun legislation?
Well, I am someone who likes to remain, I'm progressive but independent and critical of Democrats when I feel like it's necessary, which far too often is. And so I've been critical of President Obama, but, I also believe very much in giving credit where credit is due. I mean, the proposal that he made a week ago, I suppose now, was a fantastic proposal. I mean, could a lot more be done? Should a lot more be done? Of course. And for the conspiracy theorists on the right, who maybe you may have some of them listening to you. I'm sure you do, Matthew, with your wide reach. But for those listening, that doesn't mean I support banning guns. I will, however, support registering your guns and making you get licensed like using any other deadly machinery. And that I'd support, but that's not. Let's get back to the point here. But what this legislation does, which I think is what, is in the realm of what can pass and where American public opinion is, and some very important components. One, obviously, universal background check. So that I think, that's been one of the things that probably the single biggest thing that I've fought for with various clients I've worked with more, for the last couple of years as an advisor to Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and at times in the past, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, the Brady campaign. And to be clear, I'm speaking for myself here, so I do want to be clear, not for any organization. But the closing the gun show loophole, as we call it, but really it's universal background checks, because at this point it's not just gun shows. People in a parking lot can sell a gun to each other. I mean, I couldn't sell you a car in a parking lot without the federal government knowing about it, but I can sell you an assault rifle. I can sell you a 50 caliber sniper rifle that can take down a small aircraft. That I'm allowed to do, which is insane. So there will be exceptions. Antique guns. These are the types of things the right made us think about in 1994 when the Brady bill was passed to do background checks, and they got this exception carved out because they try to say, passing a gun on from father to son, or an antique gun. And of course there'll be exceptions for that, but they've used that loophole to mean that you've got side by side at gun shows one table selling guns, the one that is a federally licensed dealer that has to do background checks, and then the table right next to it somebody that doesn't, and magically the guns cost a lot more there. Wink, wink. I wonder why.
Right.
You pay a premium to not everybody know who you are. So that is an enormous change, and the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, I wish I had the exact numbers on me, did a study that showed that this could markedly lower the gun violence level in this country. Just doing that, 40% of guns right now are bought through this loophole, which is insanity. Second of all, an assault weapons ban, which I think is an important part of it, hugely important. To me, slightly more important than that is the third one, which is limiting high-capacity magazines that can shoot 10. These magazines with more than 10 bullets. Example, what Jared Loughner had, which allowed him to shoot 31 bullets in Tucson. Had he only been able to shoot 10, people wrestled the gun away when he ran out. He would have run out a lot sooner. So to me, the reason why the magazines are more important is obviously if you limit to 10 bullets, and you can limit an assault weapon to 10 bullets too. Right? And that's the most important thing, is limiting the number of bullets, not what the weapon, whether it used to be we defined assault weapons in 1994 where they had 2 extra features on it, a bayonet mount and things like that. So that don't think really matter too much to me, but I think it's good to have it in there because, again, I do think there's a level of intimidation with assault weapons. I think there's a level of military, in our culture, of making it a militaristic society of people walking around with these big weapons around their shoulders that should not be. So don't get me wrong and say I don't think it's important. I just think the magazines are slightly more important. And then the final, fourth component, again, this doesn't count the 23 executive orders, all of which were very important too. The fourth component, which is having a national bill, a national sort of standard with teeth, where we make people do real jail time for gun trafficking. That we don't have that now, and that we don't enforce what we do have, is again completely insane. For people that don't know, there's something called straw purchases. I know that you couldn't pass a background check. So what I do is I walk in somewhere where there is a background check, I buy a gun, I pass it, then I just sell it to you. Even knowing that you may have a criminal record, even knowing that you may, have all sorts of prohibitions against you. That's gun trafficking. It's weapons trafficking.
Right.
And we, different states handle it in different ways, but we don't have this strong national standard that very much penalizes people for this. This will do that. So those are all hugely important. The executive orders, beefing up mental health, beefing up what records are shared. Again, that's caused a number of tragedies. Tucson is one example where the U.S. Army did not share a record they had that would have prohibited Jared Loughner from getting a gun, habitual drug use. In the case of in Virginia Tech shooting, the shooter there had been adjudicated mentally unfit to have weapons in a court in Virginia. That record was never shared. The executive order pumps that up and creates a lot more incentives. I think we need these bills to pass so there'll be more penalties for those that don't share records. But these are all important changes, and really I'll say one last thing. One huge change is that this is a public health problem. This is along the lines of drunk driving, secondhand smoke, things where we've changed in the past that needs a multifaceted approach. And one of the biggest aspects of that is changing culture. When it became no longer funny to drive drunk, or no longer acceptable, and people kind of looked at you like you were a weirdo if you did it, and worse than that, a criminal. Same thing with secondhand smoke around your kids. The culture of guns are toys, leave guns around the house unsecured. That needs to be something where you're shunned by the good people society. If your weapons, like in the case in Newtown with Adam Lanza, if your guns are not securely locked, culture can solve some of these problems, And so having PSAs and like President Obama said, on safe gun storage, things like that are important, as well as having the consumer product safety folks get involved in looking at gun safes and others to make them safe, because they've always been kept out of guns. Actually, and I keep doing this, keep thinking of more things. The final thing, obviously, the NRA is trying to suppress information sharing. So getting the CDC and National Institute of Health and others back in doing studies on what prevents gun violence, which the NRA successfully suppressed about 15 years ago, is important, and having the agencies share that information. And if we had a terrorist coming here, would we not allow the FBI to talk to the ATF about certain stuff? We'd be crazy. But that's what we do on guns. So it's this is a huge, beyond even what I expected approach, and President Obama's to be lauded for it.
I'm talking to my friend Cliff Schecter. We've talked about this before on the show. After I don't even remember which couple horrible mass shootings that happened.
We've
talked
many,
about this.
It's like hard to remember.
Yeah, precisely. I honestly don't even remember. But I'm certainly not someone who's a big fan of Barack Obama's. But again, I will give credit where it's due. I am very happy that at least this conversation is happening, and he's actually really is pushing it. I want to ask you, there was one aspect of the executive order that I would, on its surface, worries me a little bit. But again, you're someone who I know really follows this issue and someone who I value the opinion on. One of the executive orders, while it does bump up kind of the mental health, it also kind of bumps up what appears to be a lot more funding and easy funding for, like, it would appear to be like security. I do sort of worry about I don't think that necessarily this order does it, but I do worry about turning schools into like armed camps. That is like my one thing that I really, because obviously I know you heard there's the story recently about the security guard in a grade school who had his gun and left it on the bathroom sink. And so it's just right. A matter of like,
and he was hired specifically after Newtown to be the guy to protect the school.
Precisely, yeah. That's like the one thing about it that worries me a little bit, and wanting to say, okay, we really should be careful on that. But overall, I got to say, I am very, I think it's overall a big positive what Obama's done.
No, and I think that's a valid concern. Again, the sort of creeping militarism in society, right? Ever since Eisenhower first warned about the military-industrial complex, and it happens everywhere. It happens in films, and it happens. I'm not one of the right-wingers who just wants to blame movies and video games. I don't think that that's led, and studies, at least that I've seen, don't conclusively show. But I do think there's something to making your society a more militaristic society. I still think, and a lot of that to me has to do with, what people encounter every day. What your life is. We've already done it at our airports, where essentially it seems like you have to get a full body cavity search just to get on an airplane.
Right.
And doing that for our kids to go to school, yes, I've got a real problem with that. I think that there should be guards, there should be police who do their rounds and protect schools and wander, go through a school the way they go past stores, the way they go past malls, the way they go past everywhere, just sort of going around to make sure.
It's part of the beat. It's their beat.
That's exactly right. And I do believe very strongly that as somebody who's got kids in school, that should be part of what the police do. But to have people kids have to go through a checkpoint Charlie every day with a guard standing there with an assault weapon, that's something I would expect to see in North Korea. Or somewhere like that. That's not the society I want my kids growing up in. So I think there needs to be a balance there. And I guess you're right. There's always a reason to be concerned, and we need to be vigilant and see where that money goes. If it goes to train more police and others that can do this beat and go walk around near schools and make sure things are safe, that's good. If it goes to turning our schools into militarized zones, that's bad. And that's
also, if it ends up going to necessarily some, for-profit security thing that's profiting off it. Also, I would have a little concern about it.
At your school, yes.
Precisely.
I'm always concerned about that, of course. And you're right, hugely right to bring that up, because there's often hidden little parts of larger proposals that can end up being dangerous and negative. And so you're absolutely right about that. That's something we need to pay attention to. And we have to be careful to beef up security in ways that make sense, and not turning our entire society into a militarized zone, which is what the NRA would do, because then they would sell more guns. So it's actually they probably would love that. Well, we know they would. They proposed it.